this next story came to us from someone in the community who was notified a registered sex offender is moving into their neighborhood, and they're concerned about how to keep their family safe in the situation. They posted about it in their neighborhood Facebook group, and it generated a lot of really great questions. So we wanted to continue this conversation this morning with Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services with Crime Stoppers Houston. Thank you so much for coming in, Andy. We do appreciate it.
Great to be here. I had 3 cups of coffee, so let's go.
He's wired, right?
I'm going.
So we're continuing this conversation. This kind of really started with Megan's Law. For people not familiar with what Megan's Law is, tell us about it.
Megan was a
Remind
young
us.
girl in New Jersey. And unbeknownst to her and her family, there was a convicted sex offender living right across the street from her, whose tendency was to prey upon children. Megan, unfortunately, was sexually assaulted and then subsequently murdered. The family was upset. They were outraged. Why didn't we know about it? We could have protected our daughter. We could have kept her away from that. And that was the genesis and the gist for what's commonly called sex offender registry laws, which are prominent in all states today. That was the catalyst for change.
I do want to draw your attention to the fact that this person was notified. Is this common practice? Does this not always happen?
If you get notification in the mail, you can blame me, because that was actually a law that we ended up passing. I want to say it was in 2001. I had Louisiana originally. I went over there and they had a notification system, which I was really impressed with. If you were a high-risk sex offender and you were being released back to the community from prison, or if you were put on probation, then if you lived within a 3-block radius or a mile radius, you got a direct notification, kind of like, well, here's your new neighbor, here's who the person is. You got their name, their address, their offense, and the picture. And that's only for high risk.
So there's a threshold with this.
And only if you're in that 1-mile radius do you get a notice. The sex offender registry, which is available for anybody in the state of Texas, and we highly encourage people and families to check it regularly, because the reality is that there's a good percentage of sex offenders that are transient. So what you look for today might not necessarily be the same 2 weeks or a month from now, but you can check by your zip code, and you can get all sorts of information as to who's residing in your neighborhood that's currently required to register.
To consult that list, where can people go?
They can go to Texas Department of Public Safety. There's certain different apps they can pull up. Each local police department has registries. And the best thing about it is public information. And basically, we're just making the public information user-friendly where you can access it quickly.
Many different resources. What are some common misconceptions about the freedom someone has as a registered sex offender living in the community?
But one of the questions that we get all the time was, well, there's a sex offender and it's right across the street from an elementary school. Can they do that? They can reside anywhere they please if they are not on paper. So in other words, if a sex offender has completed their obligation to the state of Texas, they're no longer on parole, they've finished their probation, then they're not required to not reside in what's commonly called child safety zones. If you are on parole or probation, often the parole board or the probation department and the court will put a stipulation in your conditions that you can't reside within 1,000 feet of a school or daycare or any facility that predominantly takes care of children. So the important thing to remember is, if you're on paper, parole, probation, basically you can't do that.
Really good perspective. What are some rights that homeowners have if they do find out that there is a registered sex offender moving down into a home down the street from their home? What are their rights as a homeowner?
Well, you have the right to that information. You have the right to know who they are. You have the right to know their level of risk. And there's about 4 different levels of risk. There's high risk, moderate risk, low risk, and then of course there's civil commitment, which are far and few between, but we do have civil commitment for high risk sex offenders. The best thing is that you're get to know who your, we always say get to know who your neighbors are. So this
It's a community.
This is one way you get to know if there are registered sex offenders in your neighborhood. And trust me, with over 7,500 registered sex offender in the greater Houston area, more than likely there are going to be some in your zip code. So it's just important knowledge just to have.
Andy Kahn, we so much appreciate your time this morning.
You bet.
Thank you,
Anytime.
sir. Thank you.